Hi friends, welcome to a new video here on the LNM channel. Welcome or welcome back. If you've been here before, if you're new here, hi, I'm Chris, also known as LNM here on the internet space. Today we're going to be doing a video where I show you the changes that I made in my Obsidian Vault throughout the month of July. Originally, I was going to make it a video where I kind of like wrapped up the system changes that I made and then also showed you the different quotes and stuff that I created and like notes that I created inside of the Ideaverse / Zettelkasten of it all. However, after recording the video, I spent 40 minutes talking about just the system changes. So we are just going with that. So if you're interested in Obsidian itself and the differences or the changes that I made throughout the month to my systems within it, if that's something that interests you, then go ahead and keep on watching. So welcome to my Obsidian Vault. We are going to be starting with the changelog. I will leave timestamps so that you guys can skip ahead if that's something that you would prefer. I feel like it was important to show kind of the differences in my system from when it started in July and how it ended. And I also really want to be able to show this because I want to bring home the fact that this system is constantly in flux, and I treat it very similarly to my analog systems, which, by the way, if you haven't seen that yet, I did post a July wrap-up for my analog journals, and I will leave that linked up above in case you haven't watched it and want to. It's more on the creative and daily logging aspect of things, but I do keep analog and digital journals for those of you that are new here and are just coming in for this Obsidian video. It's important to me that it's stated that I treat my Obsidian in the same way as I treat my journals, my analog journals, in that I want them to shift and change as I need them to, and I will only know what I like and don't like through use. So anyways, as you can see, there was quite a lot of changes that happened in July. There's only one note in here that happened outside of July, and that was just so that I could kind of gauge when my 1-year anniversary is. And as you can see, it's August 20th. So technically, I also added this in July. But yeah, 11 instances of things that I decided to log as changes in my system. The first one was on the 10th. I spent a lot of time that day working on customizing the Obsidian weekly, monthly, and daily pages. Not sure how long they'll stick, but it's part of the fun. It's similar to the experimentation I do in my physical journals. I promise you guys, I didn't read this before. But that just goes to show you how I feel about it, right? Also, sorry if my voice sounds weird. I've been having some weird things going on with my voice lately, and I don't know why. My mom says that it's probably a side effect of my surgery, but it's been months since my surgery and they're just now acting up. But anyways, similar to the experimentation I do in my physical journals, I'm constantly moving things around to see what sticks and what of the things I'm learning and imitating works best for me. Trial and error through and through. So I worked really heavily this month on my templates. So let me go ahead and show you I changed actually my plugin for my journals. I was using Periodic Notes, I believe is the plugin name, and I switched over to journals after watching a video on having calendar notes roll up into each other. And that's kind of like one of the big things that I did. And I think it's one of the reasons why I've been in my Obsidian so much this month. It's just been a workflow that's really, really helped me. So let me go ahead and open here, daily note template. I'm going to open weekly note template. I'm going to open monthly note template and yearly note. Okay, so let me go ahead and close these home tabs really quick. So my daily note tab right now, this is what the template looks like, and I'm going to show you what it looks like in practice, but this is the template that I have got right now. I did change the way that it looks quite a few times, so I think I could probably show you. This is what it looks like in the beginning. Also, this font is enormous. Am I in frame? Yeah. This font is enormous. I don't usually have it this font. I just increased it so that it's easier for you guys to see. My font is usually 13 and right now it's at 19. So just FYI. I don't hate it, but it's it's definitely not the font I usually use. So I have this section. First of all, I have these properties. So I have a wake up time property, a temperature property, a weather property, and then this journal property that's here and journal date relates to the actual plugin that I'm utilizing. That's automatically created every single time I create a new note for daily notes. This tag here, the created tag, is one that I don't use anymore, and you'll notice that in newer notes. But I have this section for my media log, and If you watched my analog video, you'll notice that you'll remember that I spoke about how I am keeping my media log in my Obsidian, and then I'm transferring that information into my physical notebook. And so this is how I do it. I use the tags to do that, and I make sure that it's bulleted because that way it gets picked up by a data view that I use in my weekly and monthly notes. So I'll show that in a sec. But basically, I have a media log section where I bullet point, the media that I'm consuming that I want to log. I had a notes section for just random notes throughout the day, and then I had this notes created today and notes less touched today section. And that's what I kind of became at the beginning of the month, but it has changed. This is what it looks like. So again, I have, actually, let me remove this. Again, I have these property tags that I keep using. I added a rating tag, a rating property. I have this kind of calendar, which again goes with the plugin that I'm utilizing for daily notes, and it links to the different notes. I can go back the previous day or the next day. I can go to the weekly note from here, the monthly or the yearly note. So it's really useful, especially on the phone. When I'm on my phone, it's really easy to navigate. I don't have to move screens in and out to be able to access the calendar. Here on the computer, I don't really use it very much because it's very easy for me to navigate right here on the calendar on the sidebar, but this is very useful for me when I'm on my phone. I changed the note really quickly because I realized that there was something in that note that I didn't want you to see in the musing section. So there's that. But I changed the notes sections to life notes and musings, and I created a section for free writing where I just kind of like stream of consciousness write. This is something that I was writing for my Substack newsletter that came out last week. I started it off in this one. This is a place where if you know about Zettelkasten and things like that, this is where, or like how to take smart notes or even the para method, this is a space that I use for fleeting notes, what you would call fleeting notes. It's a very stream of consciousness, very first draft space. That's what I've been using the free writing section for. And then I changed the navigation for the notes. So I created this notes navigation section, which is where I keep the notes that I created today, the notes that I touched today, on this day, and the Obsidian changelog, which you guys would have seen. And that gets picked up through a data view, which I'm not going to go into data views here, but I did create this data view where it picks up every single time that I hashtag Obsidian log. But they exist in my daily note, and then it gets rolled up into that Obsidian changelog note. So these are also data views that I have set up under callouts. And I don't want to get, again, if you're new to Obsidian and you have questions on any of these things, let me know and I'll make videos on them or link you to videos that I've seen on them. This isn't so much a tutorial type video. This is more me just showing you what my system looks like and what it became in the month as, information, as inspiration, so that you guys can see an actual use case and such. So this is a data view that picks up every single note that I created on the day that is reflected on the daily note. So on this day, I created 8 new notes. And let me go ahead. One of them is this GIF. A thing that I started doing in this month is I started adding images, which is something that I did not historically do before in my Obsidian. It was actually a point of friction for me. And I just realized we were talking about the changelog, so I'm not going to go into these notes just yet, but essentially these are the notes that I created today. And then we have a notes that I touched today, which means that, if I touched a note, if I came into a note, for example, this is a preview of my Obsidian plugins video that I'm going to be making, then it'll show up on the notes touched today section, which is really, really fun because I think one of these days, I'm not sure which one, I touched like 240 something notes because I was messing with tags. And then on this day section is basically going to pick up any note that is 0728. So let's say I'm in Obsidian for 5 years. Every single note that says 0728 is going to show up here, and I can kind of see in a list the different daily notes throughout the years. And then the Obsidian changelog. So that's what the daily note is looking like right now, and what I made it in July. I also set up a weekly note. And so this is what the template looks like. It's just a note section with a subheader of things I'd like to share with my audience. So if there's anything that I come across, a link or something like that, that I don't necessarily want to create a link, I don't know, anything that's interesting to me that I want to share with my patrons, or if I want to share on Substack, I will put that here. This week in media is another data view that picks up all of those media log hashtags that I have in the daily notes. And then in the same way that I have it in my daily note, I have a section for notes that I created during the week instead of just in the day, but it excludes calendar and utility notes. So just notes that I have in the commonplace / Zettelkasten section of my Obsidian. That's what the weekly looks like. And then we have the monthly. So the monthly is similar and has a few different things. So in the monthly, if you remember, I talked about my daily notes, I have different properties. Those properties get picked up mostly in the monthly note. So here I have month in review, which is the ratings. So the ratings show up here. The one line a day is what I do with the aliases. So let me go ahead. Well, actually, let me finish here. I have my wake up times. I have my month's weather, the month in media, and then the notes that I created in the month. And then these two sections are basically the same thing, just two different views for it. So let me go ahead and show you a weekly note. So this is this week's weekly note. It's not done yet because I still have 2 days left in the week, but I wanted to use this one because I recently changed it up a bit. Here's the section where I say things I'd like to share with my audience. This is the data view that picks up all of the times that I write my media log hashtag in my daily notes. So for the week, this is in here. And then if I go into the note, for example, on 7/28, you'll see that, media log is right here, right? And so that's where that comes from. I don't have to be rewriting it in different places. It just gets picked up through a data query, a data view, a data view, okay, query, words. And so I can see this is the page. This is the note that I use when I'm filling in my media log. I just go into the weekly note and it's there, very easy for me to see. And I really like that it also shows everything, like all the text that's next to it as well, not just the front. So I have my little reactions that I write in the log also come from here. So it makes it really, really easy for me to not miss. Because if I were to wait, the next day, I read at night mostly before bed. If I were to wait the next day to write my reactions in my journal, I might forget what the initial reaction was. And so I can quickly jot it down. And then it's here for me to be able to look at later. So this week so far, I've logged 5 things in my media log. And so far this week, I've created 16 notes, excluding calendar and utility notes. So basically what utility notes are notes that I don't consider part of my linking Ideaverse, Zettelkasten, commonplace notes. They're more like reference notes or things that I just don't necessarily need to be linking. And then calendar notes would be, weekly, daily, yearly, monthly notes. Because they're fleeting notes, I also don't really want those to link to other things. They're kind of like draft notes. It's just more for the memory keeping aspect and to have a inbox. They're more inbox notes, really, is what they are. So these are all of the notes that I created, that I've created this week so far. And so this is what I mean by it's 2 different views. So here we have a table view, and then here we have a view based off of folders. And the reason I did it this way is because when I wanted to come over here and talk to you guys about it, I wanted to be able to just talk to you about the Zettelkasten notes, for example, and in this case, some of the notes in my inbox, and not necessarily any of the other notes, because the other notes can be, more for me, or can be about projects that I'm working on at the moment. And so it would just make it really, really easy for me to see, okay, these are the notes that I want to talk to you about, because these are my Zettelkasten notes, if you will. So that's kind of what that's about. And then we have my my monthly note. So this is the monthly note in action. And you can see here the rating. I ended up rating however many days these are. I'm not going to do mental math here, but however many days these are. I didn't rate the whole month because I started rating late, but you can see here that of the ones I rated, the month ended up being a 3.55, and it really came down the last week of the month. The last 2 weeks of the month brought down the rating significantly, because specifically last week, I was super, super dysregulated. And so that a lot of the 3 and 2 stars ended up happening last week and the week before. Then we have the one line a day, which I usually have collapsed. This is the alias. So one really cool thing about Obsidian, just really quickly, is the aliases. You can have a note have one name, and then you can give it other names through the alias. And so what I've been doing is I've been using aliases for the daily notes to kind of do one line a day, or on the 5th, I saw a firefly for the first time in person. And on the 10th, I hyperfixed on Obsidian and worked on daily, weekly, and monthly templates for my calendar notes, and so on and so forth. These these little one-liners are what I'm going to use to fill out my 5-year journal. And so that's another place where something that I've been doing a lot in July is that I've been using Obsidian as my inbox again, where then I can have that information. And later on, when I'm ready to sit down and spend time in my journals, in my analog journals, I have information to get to. They're not just kind of like lost in space, which is something that can tend to happen to me when I am experiencing heavy seasons of stress or lots of work. My analog systems tend to go down the drain. And so having a system that kind of works in conjunction, because I do love my analog system. I don't think I could be just digital, primarily because I am an artist who loves physical medium, but I really enjoy this kind of like merger of the two systems right now, kind of like the way that it's been working. And so here is a roll up of all of my wake up times. And I have it set up so that depending on the time it is, there's a certain category it's given. And so that kind of like rolls up here. And then the same thing with the weather, depending on the temperatures, it selects a range of emojis. And I can show you what that looks like here. So you can kind of see it's kind of crazy, kind of very crazy data view. And then it also shows the weather. And if you know me, if you know anything about me, if you've been here a while, or you've been on my Patreon or what have you, I love the weather. So this is one of my favorite things. And tracking the weather is one of the things that I have had such issues with over the years because I really love seeing weather across time. I'm really excited for this to go like full circle in a year and see that. And also not just full circle in a year, but since I turned 1 year in Obsidian on the 20th, from that point on, I'm going to have some of these sections where I'm going to be able to see what I was doing last year in my notes. And so in the same way that I have in my weekly notes, I have a table like this. In my monthly notes, I have a specific view to be able to see them kind of separately. So you can see here, I created 2 maps of contents. I created a few writing project notes, lots of reference notes as well. These are more like what the utility notes would be, if you will. And then I added 58 Zettelkasten notes, 58 notes to my Zettelkasten. And then there's 8 notes still in my actual inbox. So a very heavy usage month for Obsidian. Love it very, very much. It's been a lot of fun. And then the last one would be the yearly note. And here I get the year in review. I get wake up summaries. So in the monthly note, I have the actual every single day. And here I just wanted the summary. So at the end of the year, I'm going to be able to see, how many days of the year I woke up at specific time frames. I have this year in media. So this is the full year's media log. I do tend to keep that collapsed because if not, I'm going to have to be scrolling all the time. But that is really cool. Again, it's a roll up. I'm not having to write this out every single time. It just comes in through data view queries, which I was not a big fan of data view queries. I didn't quite understand them. And obviously, as you can see, in July, I dedicated myself to adding data view queries everywhere. So in this year so far, I have created 320 notes, which is crazy. Especially when you consider in 2024, I did create this note in retrospect. This is wrong. I have to still figure this out, but I created 163 notes in 2024. So yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. So those were the things that I changed to my kind of like calendar note templates. That was one of like the first things that I ended up doing in the beginning of July. And then I had on the 12th, I had a cleaning session focused on the source notes and renaming them to fit the new system. Went from media type _ author _ title note name to media title _ author _ year. And then also made everything that isn't a source note into lowercase. Only source notes will have capitalization. So there were quite a few sessions of cleaning up the Obsidian and kind of shifting things around with the new kind of like setup that I was creating. And one of them was renaming a lot of my source notes. And I did actually record a video and post that on here, I believe. I think so. If I did, I will leave it linked up above. If I haven't yet, it will be coming soon. Another thing that I did was went through and changed birth year and death year. So I had people notes, and in the people notes, I had 2 properties, birth year and death year. One of the things that I did based off of a video that I saw by Nick Milo and Eleanor was change that to just be one property that says dates. And now that dates property is universal across multiple types of notes. That's something else that I've been doing this um, this month, is kind of finding ways for one property type to be able to be more expansive, right? So dates, when it comes to book notes, is the published date. But dates, when it comes to people notes, are birth and death year, right? But it is the same property. And so it makes it it makes it cleaner. And it also makes it really cool to be able to then, you know, it makes it's just a cleaner way of having, not a million different types of properties trying to figure out, okay, well, which one goes where, they're all dates. And the way that the date property is kind of like used within the context of the note depends on the type of note that it is. And then kind of based off that, I created a people's MOC. Yeah, see, I think the dates as a singular property versus two is going to streamline it. It's going to be it's going to be cleaner. As you can see, these kind of like log notes, I had originally started the media log hashtag as media log 2025 tag, but I did to end up renaming that and changing that out to just be media log. That way I can use that same tag perpetually, and I don't have like a bunch of tags later on kind of like clouding here. Media log 2025, 2026, that's going to be too much. So I just changed it to media log, and now it's a perpetual tag that I can use instead of it having a designated lifespan. Then we have on the 17th, I added a bunch of old notes from the Apple Notes app today, and then also changed out the tagging system for daily, weekly calendar notes. Oh, this is interesting. Okay. Moved them out of the class header and gave them their own header of calendars. So you can see here I have this kind of like class header, and under this class header, I had quite a few things. One of them being daily note, yearly note, monthly note, etc. This type of tag situation. I ended up taking them out of class and creating their own tag header, calendar, and then under daily, monthly, etc. What's interesting about that is I have since changed that as well. So even within the same month, you can kind of see how I go through a couple of different things. I recently overhauled all my tags, and we'll get to that in a second. On the 18th, started deleting the 2024 media journal note and the 2024 daily note that was creating a weird cluster on the graph. Then created my yearly note template. Like it so far, but do think I'll end up making changes later. Basically, last year I created a media journal note and a daily note, and all of my daily notes and my media journal things ended up linking to those. But then it created this weird linking situation that I didn't quite like. When I changed to journal, the journal plugin, that note ended up being completely redundant. And so I went through and started deleting the connections to that note so that I can delete the note just fine. Because the thing is that if I were to just delete the note, because the links were already in all the other ones, it would create a placeholder note. So that's one of those things that I had that was a little tedious, but it's fine. Did some more modifications to the calendar templates, added a section that handles note creation query, which is what we already saw. The purpose is to have a clear guideline when I start creating a monthly wrap up for YouTube. So that's the purpose of the Obsidian wrap up section this here for the notes. It's just so it's easier for me when it's time to actually talk about these notes to have a clear idea of what it is that I want to show you. Okay, here's another thing that's really, really interesting that is no longer the case. On the 22nd, I separated the source notes from the quotes. Quotes live in commonplace. Source notes will be like maps. And when a quote develops an idea I can expand upon, then I can create the quote note, which then becomes a map to the ideas and so on. I had wanted to do this originally, but I think I was still too muddy in my brain to make sense. Now I feel more so of how it will work. These are very stream of conscious notes. So there could be spelling errors and like grammatical issues. Essentially what I was saying, which is no longer the case, I had created a space, a folder within the Zettelkasten folder called Commonplace. And in there, I started putting quotes. So the idea was that I was going to have source notes separate and then individual quote notes would live in the commonplace section, because I was thinking about how I keep notes or keep quotes in my journal, and I wanted to reflect something similar to that in my Obsidian. as you can see here, there are no folders except 2 folders. And that's because later on I went and I deleted all the folders after I modified my tagging system. So if you come here to the 26, switching out tags to emojis inspired by Brian Jenks on YouTube, and also changing out the source tags I've been using for links inspired by Nick Milo and the Obsidian Bases video I was watching earlier. So I watched a video by Brian Jenks. I will leave that linked down below. There's 2 videos, very lengthy, very amazing. I loved them very, very much. They kind of like unlocked something in me. And all of the tags that I had, I went through and I started removing them. I still have to do some more cleanup. There are still some here that are left, specifically this class and musings tag and this ideas tag. Media log, Obsidian log, and first log are going to stay because those are just like my tagging system to be able to do the rollups. But everything else became an emoji tag. And I did create an emoji tag index, which is kind of similar to if you keep a commonplace physically. Lately in the journaling community, you've seen kind of like the dot index. So I did create an emoji index. Remember how earlier I talked about how I had created a separate subheader for calendar notes. And so it was now calendar main tag, and then under you had nested tags for daily, monthly, etc. I realized, first of all, I don't need that. Like sometimes because I'm used to creating tags for everything, I will create tags. Then I realize I'm never gonna, I don't need to have a tag for a monthly note versus a daily note to classify them, because I know which one is a monthly note and a weekly note and a daily note. And I'm not going to query them. I'm not going to look for them that way. You know, when I'm going to search for a daily note, I'm going to search for the date. I'm going to go into the calendar plugin, kind of like on the sidebar. I'm going to do different things. I'm not going to search through it by that type of tag. And so because I was changing it to emojis, I decided to just make all calendar tags, or rather calendar notes, have the calendar tag, like this calendar emoji. So time-specific notes that once the time that they are related to has passed, I won't be altering its content. So one of the things that's important for me in my vault is that a lot of notes are ever-changing. If you know about Zettelkasten, you'll know that there's this concept of like, or smart notes or pair notes, whatever. There's this concept of evergreen notes, which are notes that they are at, perfect notes, if you will. They are beautifully linked. They have concrete ideas. They are great notes. But for me, personally, I don't quite like the concept of an evergreen note because I know that I'm going to be working and changing and evolving. For me, notes are always in motion. And so notes that live in the Zettelkasten side of things, or even in, the reference side of things or what have you, any note that is not time specific can change as time goes on. But there are certain notes, like my daily notes, like my monthly notes, my yearly notes, and also the notes that I brought in from Apple Notes, that I will not be altering after the day is done. That note it doesn't get backfilled, it doesn't get changed because it is a representation of the time in which it happened. And so those time-specific notes get hit with this emoji. Whether that is a daily note, yearly note, etc. If it is a time-specific note, it gets this emoji, which I then use to be able to filter them out when I'm looking at things like my graph. I used to have a thing called topic notes. I switched those out to tags. And tags, based off of Brian Jenks. Based on Brian Jenks' videos, those eventually become mocks. And it's not just based on his video. That's something that I also know as well. Like the topic tags or the topic notes that I have really are little mini maps of content. But then when I do have maps of content, they get this emoji. And then I had a to research, to read, to watch, to listen. I had all of those tags. I changed them to this fork and knife emoji. And that means pending to be consumed. And I have a thing here that says, haha, makes me laugh. That replaces the to read, to research. Anything that is pending to be consumed or pending for me to look into gets this kind of like cheeky utensils tag. Those are more kind of like, they're kind of like miscellaneous outside of, I can't figure out a release section for it, but they're kind of like out there. They're more like utilitarian emojis. Then we get to, and going back to what I was telling you about how I have, there's portions of my Obsidian Vault that kind of like function as a second brain, and there's some that function as a Zettelkasten or a commonplace or a Ideaverse, and there's different sections of my Obsidian that serve different functions for me. And the kind of like second brain function, I have utility notes, and these utility notes, like I mentioned earlier, are notes that I would like to exclude from linking. Their only purpose is to be placeholders of information that I don't really want clogging the graph. For example, something that I realized because I was looking at my Notion, my previous Notion, which I will be talking about in a different video, I had databases in there that had my physical collections, and I want to move that into my Obsidian Vault if I'm using it as a second brain. And so, for example, a book that I read that's only meant to track rating and technical info, but I don't really have any ideas that I want to come out of it to feed my Zettelkasten, that would get hit with a utility note, because that way it doesn't impact my graph or any of my linking notes, if you will. I will show you an example of that later. Or in another video if we don't get to it in this one. And then the emojis that function in my Zettelkasten kind of commonplace section are this kind of inbox link, which is gonna be for any of the books that I'm currently reading or processing and creating, kind of like they're incubating, if you will. Like, for example, Jurassic Park is one that is currently incubating. Here. So Jurassic Park is currently incubating. There's a bunch of stuff. I have worked on this note, but I'm still not 100% ready to just let it go and exist in my Obsidian. I still want to kind of do some more work in it and see if there's any other ideas that I can come out and other notes that I can create. So I have that little inbox. The point of this inbox is for it not to get crazy. I don't want this to be like, right now there's 20 things in here. I definitely have to go in and work on bringing some of this down because I don't want it to get crazy. I want to be able to process a lot of these things fairly quickly. And then we have this kind of like sparkle emoji, which is one of my favorite emojis, and I refuse to let AI take the sparkle away from me. Like, they're using the sparkle and I refuse to give it to them in the same way that I refuse to give them the M dash. So the little sparkle are my generative notes. So those are my literature notes, my source notes, so anything in my Zettelkasten is either going to have this emoji or this emoji. This emoji is for ideas that I have that are my own. This is for anything that I am collecting from other people. So, but both of these belong in the Zettelkasten, if you will. So that's what those emojis are. And then I have project-specific emojis. So this one, if seedlings is an idea that I can develop at leisure, this one is for projects or ideas or things that have a bit more, that are a bit more pressing, that I want to work on more urgently, or that I have certain constraints surrounding. So if I go and click that, then I can look at all the projects that I'm currently working on or that I want to work on with more intensity and fervor, if you will. And then I have platform-specific emojis that get used along with this one. So anything tagged with this one and this videotape, or this cassette tape, or no, it's a videotape. Yeah, it's a VHS. Those are YouTube videos. And if it is this one with that, that's a website project. And then this kind of emoji is for any other type of like visual media type project, if you will. If it's just this one, then it's a writing project. And then this little green check mark is when I have published the output. So let's say I'm working on a newsletter, for example, for Substack. As I'm drafting it, it has this one because I want to send it out immediately. Then it gets pushed into once it gets published, I add this emoji to it. And so that's the emoji changelog. That's the emoji system that I have for my notes now. It's more of like a status indicator. And because I was able to do this, I suddenly felt like I didn't need the millions of folders that I had in my Zettelkasten folder. And so I deleted all the subfolders in the Zettelkasten folder. So now everything except maps and people, I'll sort through whatever I need to via tags. Excited to be getting to a place where I feel the need for folders less. So I eventually want to get to a place where I need less and less folders. And I finally feel like I'm getting to that because the system is working in a way that makes sense to me. but it's taken a year. And it's taken a year for me at least because I spent a lot of time outside of Obsidian, mind you. So, you know, if I would have spent like July was very involved with Obsidian. I did a lot of changes as you can see, and I spent a lot of time in it. And so because I spent time in it, I was able to kind of see, okay, how is my brain working every day? What is it that I like to keep track of? What is it that I don't need to keep track of? What's excess? What's not? What do I want necessary? What is it that's important to me to track? What could I care less about? You know, and things like that. And so the more you use it, the more you realize. And for me, I'm getting to a place where there is a certain workflow that is being created, and yeah, it's really, really nice. I'm quite enjoying my time in here. And then the last thing that I have on the changelog is that on the 28th, I started experimenting with adding images to the vault and thumbnails for posts as well. Starting with people notes, but then also adding screenshots to quote notes. So I started adding images. I recently went onto Arena. I have an Arena account, and I've realized about myself that I do quite need visual media. And so I've been trying to figure out, not just Arena, but also because I went into my Notion, that I do quite enjoy having, you know, visual aspects to my notes. And so I've kind of been experimenting with that, especially because I did also donate to the Catalyst license. So now I have access to beta features, and I have access to the bases in Obsidian, which I'm so excited about. There's definitely still things that don't work as much as I would like them to, but I'm having a good time. So like, for example, I created this books that I've read this year database, and it's still being worked on, but essentially all of the properties get put in here, and I have two ways of looking at it. It's so cool. Lots of horror. I still have to add more stuff, but this is another thing that I was working on this month. It's so, so cool. So I've been working on adding images to posts. So for example, this one for Darkwater, I created a thumbnail emoji so that it can get read in the bases. And then I also added it to, you know, the actual note itself. So that's pretty cool. Another thing that I did that I didn't write in the changelog was that I did modify a lot of my source notes templates. I'm not going to go into that right now, but I did modify a lot of them. As you can see, there's quite a few in here. What's really cool about properties is that you could always just toggle them, but this is one of the ones, as you can see, has an inbox. I still have to go in and actually modify that. So those are the changes that I did in my Obsidian Vault to these systems and what have you. Something else that I changed, I don't think I mentioned it, is I did change the theme. The colors are a little bit different, and I changed to the minimal theme, as you can see here. So that's what I did. I did create 90 new notes in Obsidian, excluding calendar notes, because I did have, you know, calendar notes, but that's not included in this number. So quite a few notes. I was very active in the month. If you're interested in seeing the actual notes that I created throughout the month, I do go through that in my weekly videos over on Patreon, so do check that out. And I will be posting either a brief video or a newsletter. I haven't quite decided yet, kind of going through my favorite ones and the different threads that I've seen. But that's something that's still in the works. If it's something that you're interested, I do recommend checking out the Patreon. The lowest tier starts at $4 a month and has access to quite a lot of things. So do check that out. That is linked down below. So that's a wrap. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, go ahead and let me know in the comments. If you want me to go deeper into any of the topics that I discussed or any of the changes that I made, let me know. I am very keen to know what your thoughts are and love interacting with you down there in the comments. So if you've made it this far, go ahead and let me know if you made any changes to your digital note-taking systems, whether you use Obsidian or Notion or any other type of system. If you did any changes that you're really, really excited about, I would love to know. And if you have just started with Obsidian, I would also love to know. Basically, just tell me whatever it is that you want to tell me in the comments. I love interacting with you guys. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next post. Bye!